Let's go right now, live to Labour conference in Liverpool. Joining me now is Labour MP Steve McCabe. He also is Parliamentary Chair of Labour Friends of Israel. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much. So glad we finally got a link up to Liverpool. Thank you for that. I would like to ask you about events in Israel in a few moments, but first let's concentrate on what's been happening at Labour Party conference. We're getting a variety of announcements coming out. We're going to have Keir Starmer speak tomorrow. As I say, Rachel Reeves, the big speech today. I mean, Blinken, you'd miss it. I mean, yes, it's been very unlucky seems like a glib word to use in the context, but in terms of the 24-hour news cycle, obviously the focus has been on what's happened in Israel, in Gaza, and not on what's going on in Liverpool, in the conference hall that you're in right now. But there hasn't really been much of a tangible, meaty offering from the Labour conference in terms of what the voters want yet. Has there? Are you worried that that's not enough to entice voters to go to you?
Well, I'm prepared to accept that we need to do a bit more to enthuse voters, but I think this conference is about people getting on with the job, preparing for government, being sensible, being disciplined, thinking about what we need to do to reassure the public. And I think that is actually happening. We'll hear a bit more from Keir tomorrow, and there's a bit of time yet to put a bit more flesh on the bones for the things that will perhaps give people a bit more hope and aspiration.
We've heard that the Keir Starmer, if he were Prime Minister, he wouldn't reinstate the HS2 northern leg, although very critical of the government for getting rid of it, for cancelling that. That obviously dominated Tory conference last week. But we've got the Supreme Court this week. Today they started 3 days of hearings on the Rwanda plan. These are Rwanda flights for migrants who've arrived on those rickety channel dinghies. And we understand that Keir Starmer is saying that if the Rwanda flights are allowed, whether it's the Supreme Court or the European Court of Human Rights, he would cancel them, even if they were proving to be actually a very, very good way of deterring migrants coming to the country. Even if it was proven to work, and there are question marks about that, he would still cancel those flights. Is that the right decision?
Well, I don't know how they will be proven to work. I think what he was making clear was if the courts say they're legal, it's still not a policy we want to pursue, because the evidence where this policy has been used before is it doesn't work. It wastes a phenomenal amount of money. The gangmasters just simply move to the country where they're sent. They pick them up often at the airport before they even get to the reception centres, and they start on a route that leads back to the channel. So it's a complete waste of money. We would put our energy on processing centres in other countries and united action to smash the criminal gangs.
It's interesting that your shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has talked about how he says that Britain will start dating the EU under Labour. Now, Keir Starmer's shadow Brexit Secretary was very much someone trying to undermine the actual enactment of the 2016 vote to leave the EU. He tried to undermine that, and in terms of the policy Labour went in, wanting a second referendum last time round. He's backtracked on all of that. No, he stands by. We're not joining the customs union. We're not joining the single market. Sounds like some members of his shadow cabinet don't necessarily agree. Dating the EU under Labour? No one in this room, in all seriousness, he says, would suggest you can have a divorce and you could get married again without even going on a date. But what does he mean by all of that?
I think he was possibly having a bit of fun. Look, the reality is that we're just accepting that we can't spend the rest of our life demonising all the countries in the EU.
When did we do
have
that?
To work with these
we didn't do that.
Well, Julia, my view is that part of the Brexit campaign did involve a degree of demonisation of our partners. That's my recollection. You may have a different
I don't remember
one.
doing that at all. I love all of our EU partners, old EU partners. It's the EU, the unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy I didn't like.
OK, I'll accept that's your defence, but nonetheless, I'm simply saying we're accepting that we have to work with these people, and that's all we're saying.
Are we not doing that now?
Well, I don't think the British government has made great strides since we left the EU to work on sensible arrangements. I think the Northern Ireland situation is a classic example of how they haven't.
OK, well, I would say that the EU are deliberately provoking us and enacting policies to make life difficult for people of Britain and Northern Ireland. But there we are. Can I ask you about planning? Lots of talk about, changing planning laws, making sure that Labour can get on with the major infrastructure projects that we really, really need in this country, whether it's about energy or building homes or the like, talking about social housing and the like. It's all very well. Everyone's in favour of all of these things being built, until someone wants to build them somewhere, and then everyone opposes it. Whether it's some ecological reason or people who live nearby, whether it's the cost, whether it's destruction of existing homes, the NIMBYs wanting their views or peace and quiet. How is Labour going to get around that?
Well, I think there are two aspects to this. I think one, at very local level, we could give communities more say over planning decisions, and it is the case that quite often there are ridiculous planning decisions taken that really affect local communities and they get no say and no redress. Where we're talking about major national infrastructure projects, then we've got to have powers to say this is going ahead and this is going to happen. And if you look at some of the problems HS2 ran into, part of that is associated with our planning laws and the number of obstacles and objections that can be put in the way.
OK. Let me also ask about this poll. We've got an exclusive TalkTV poll with one poll, and they've asked, would Sir Keir Starmer make a good Prime Minister? And only 21% say he'd be good, just 36% say he'd be average, 28% say he'd be bad. This despite the fact the majority of people polled would vote for a Labour government. Thing is, they'd vote for a Labour government, according to these polls, but they don't think they're going to be very good under Keir Starmer. They don't rate him personally. They don't trust Labour on the economy. 46% say no. They don't think the Labour government's going to, cut their taxes and the like. What do you think it is about Keir Starmer that means so many people would vote for him but don't think he'd be very good at the job as Prime Minister?
Well, I haven't seen that poll and I haven't seen Rishi Sunak's equivalent in it. I'd be interested to see that. Look, I'm conceding that I think we have a bit more work to do to seal the deal with the electorate. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's not unusual before someone becomes Prime Minister that people express doubts and wonder whether or not they'll be up to the job. I think the authority often comes with the job. But what I've seen is the changes Keir has made in the Labour Party and how he's made the Labour Party electable, and I certainly trust him on that.
OK. Can I also ask you, as, of course, in your role as Parliamentary Chair of the Labour Friends of Israel, what you make of some of the reaction in this country to the attack by Hamas on Israel? We've seen a total of, 1,200 deaths, 700 plus on the Israeli side, 500 plus on the Palestinian side. Horrific scenes. And yet some people, we've got protests in the streets, we've got people with pro-Palestinian banners, perfectly understandable, but people saying they are celebrating this attack on Israel, people chanting the slogan of Hamas, from the river to the sea. What do you make of those protests happening in 21st century Britain, just days after young men, women, children, elderly people were slaughtered in their own homes?
Well, frankly, it's disgusting. It's as straightforward as that. If ever people needed to see what Hamas are really about, they've witnessed it in the last 72 hours. This is about a terrorist organisation willing to rape, murder, abuse. It's backed by Iran. Every decent person in this country should be denouncing it. And I quite frankly can't understand the mentality of people who are dancing in the streets, but their sentiments are utterly misplaced. And all I say is, if this had happened in our country, no one would tolerate their behaviour.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Steve McCabe there, Labour MP, Parliamentary Chair of the Labour Friends of Israel. Appreciate you joining us there live from Liverpool at the Labour Party conference.